It's my solemn sadness to announce two deaths. Vice President Dick Cheney and the death in New York City. Hello, I'm Kendall Bryan Hunter. This is my podcast, The Eyes of Faith. I'm the author of this book, Consider My Servant Job. It's a book that's a spiritual commentary, not quite devotional, but more commentary on the book of Job from the Old Testament. We're all going through difficult times right now, and hopefully I can help you find some answers, and if not answers, help you find some comfort. Now back to the humor. Two deaths, Dick Cheney and New York City with the election of Mamdami. So Dick Cheney, I went to the library, picked up his book. Apparently no one else has checked out this book. I got to go back to reading some biographies. Both Bushes, kind of interesting person, you know. He had the Darth Vader nickname, and I remember hearing, I don't know if this is true or not, he got the nickname Darth Vader. He said, it's not true, but it's certainly useful. The New York City election. Well, I don't believe in a democracy. I do believe in a republic. That's what the Constitution says. And Federalist 12 talks about the nature of a republic. If they voted, and if it's a clean system, then we have to accept the results of the election. However, Mamdami is advocating policies that have proven to fail. There's certainly an emotional attachment, the idea of, this model I use, feelings, fairness, and friends. And under fairness, one of the things they talk, that the left believes in is distributive justice. Okay, everyone's had their turn. We've had LaGuardia, so we've had an Italian mayor, Giuliani, another Italian mayor. It's time for have a Muslim mayor to take his turn. That you have the emotional attachment. It's more of an aspirational. Let's get emotional attachment, feelings, fairness, and friends. Look at the model I talk about. And I explained this model in an earlier podcast called Charlie Kirk and the Pink Elephant Effect. But you have the emotional attachment, this wanting something to be true. You have beauty bias. He's physically charismatic, physically attractive, young, has that wonderful George Lucas head of hair. Same thing with Governor Newsom, and he has that Dracula hair of his and the slick back. I'm Governor Newsom. I will suck the life out of your state. He has good, Mamdami has good persuasion skills, good persuasion game. He can come up with clever talking points. That's actually a part of the battle. That's something Scott Adams, another podcaster who don't know how long he'll be with us, talks about the talking points, the slogans. Bill Clinton, it's the economy, stupid. So I'm predicting doom and gloom, and part of that church I belong to is Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So no, we're not a doomsday cult, but it's coming. But could I be wrong about this? Certainly, I was wrong about John Fedderman, and I'll confess this. During the primaries, when Mike Lee was running against Dan Liljenqest, I voted for Dan Liljenqest. Okay, I'll admit I was wrong with that. Now, I did vote for Mike Lee and have subsequently voted for Mike Lee as senator from Utah, but, I'll admit I was wrong about that. I'll admit I was wrong about Fetterman. So, I do have a track record of making mistakes. Could I be right about this? I served my mission in Portugal, and after my mission, hold on a second, nose is getting a little drippy. Much better now. So after my mission, my parents came and picked me up, which you shouldn't do. It's just a hassle. But we traveled to places in Scandinavia, and then we went to the Soviet Union, or which had now become Russia, and to Leningrad, which had now become St. Petersburg. So this is 6 months after the collapse of the Soviet Union. So we're still dressed in the hammered sickle uniforms, because they hadn't changed the uniforms yet. Oh, they were flying the tricolor Russian flag. But this was in 1992. The standard of living was like in the 1970s. No personal computers, no washer and dryer, a small flat apartment. what happened there, I'll never forget this, and I've talked about this a lot on other podcasts, and I'll continue to talk about it. We heard over the news that there's going to be a bread shortage, so we just went to the local bread store, completely empty. This is like in Europe where you have little boutiques. You have the coffee store, the bread store, the fruit store, not like a supermarket. It was completely empty, and they had the two guys that were just kind of standing there because they didn't have anything to do. I'm assuming they're collecting their paycheck. But one thing I noticed, they didn't have a cash register. They had an abacus. And you think about that laser scanning robotic cash register you use that talks to you, okay? These policies do make a difference. So could I be wrong? Certainly. Could I be right? But what's at risk? Well, your safety, your prosperity, and certainly the truth. Oakland, Detroit. Those ring any bells? Use the frame of the Book of Mormon as your... let me grab my copy. Oh, I buried it. So use the frame of the scriptures, the Book of Mormon, the Bible. What does the Bible tell you about these principles and policies? Didn't Jesus say you're supposed to share? But what's the difference between sharing and stewardship? Didn't Christ have accountability with the stewardship, with the parable of the talents? Don't get caught in the trap where you're reconfiguring the doctrine of Christ in terms of Marxism or Adam Smithism or a free enterprise system. It's the solution is Zion, not either of these two isms. There's a note. I've seen this come up on social media, but it feels like the consensus is about 8% of the young women voted for Mamdami. It's going to take a little bit of time to say it like Obama or Obergefell. Mamdami. 80% of the young women voted for him. You know what that means? Think about that. What that means is these young women are using Mamdami government as their boyfriend or their husband. Another election result, Jay Jones, Attorney General of Virginia, famous for, this is one of his tweets, 3 people, 2 bullets. Todd Gilbert, who's the Speaker of the House, Hitler, and Pol Pot. Gilbert gets 2 bullets to the head. We really need to have a conversation about violence on the left. You remember that Charlie Kirk person or the assassination on 2 attempts on Donald Trump? Can we have a conversation about violence on the left, and don't get decoyed because NRA supports the right. NRA teaches you gun safety. The Pope Leo, was it 27th or that was Pope Benedict. I'm sorry, let's call him Pope Leo. Pope Leo, the stuffed crust pizza. Yeah, I'm perfectly fine. I'm not Catholic. Spent my time on my mission trying to convince Catholics to join my church. No problem sitting down with some Chicago pizza with him. He issued a statement, or they had the Vatican issued a statement. Don't call Mary the co-redemptrix or co-mediatrix. Now, just a little bit of Latin. IX, that's the feminine suffix. So, redemptor is male, redemptrix is female, mediator male, mediatrix female. Beatrix, that should help you remember it. Imperator, aviatrix. You probably see this with Amelia Earhart. They always call her the aviatrix. But I think this has started with John Paul II, actually, is that you call her a co-mediatrix and co-redemptrix. So in Catholicism, there's a category of theology called Marianism, and that's all things Mary, the place of Mary. Now, it's interesting. After the Da Vinci Code came out, a lot of criticism of how masculine and male-centric the Catholic Church is, but I remember hearing a Catholic person talk about it. I said, well, no, you have the whole idea of Marianism, the place of Mary in Catholic theology. Hail Mary, sort of she sort of replaces Isis, Hera, Juno from mythology, the dominant female, Ashtaroth, Astarte. take that, sort of as a demigoddess. That's an internal Catholic thing, so I'll just be hands off on it. Certainly, I have my beliefs about Mary. I do believe in the virgin birth. See, there's a line of thought that in Hebrew, there's a passage from Isaiah, a virgin shall conceive. Now, in Hebrew, it says ha-alma, and which doesn't necessarily have to translate as virgin. So there's this idea that, well, since this doesn't necessarily have to be translated as virgin, the virgin birth didn't happen. That was a later addition. Of course, that's clarified by the Book of Mormon, Nephi's vision. But also the logical or philosophical issue is that they're confusing a historical event with the words used to describe event, or what's called de re and then de dicto, and D-E-R-E for de re and then de dicto in like dictionary, what a thing is and how people are talking about it. And you're confusing with an event with the words used to describe an event. So thank you for the Book of Mormon for clarifications. Serve a mission in Portugal, Our Lady of Fatima. Yeah, I had a train stop there, so I never went to the city, but I did have a train stop there, and so I set my foot on the ground. Speaking of Catholic ladies, Nancy Pelosi is retiring. Donald Trump called her an evil woman. Then on social media, President Trump said this. On Truth Social, Nancy Pelosi, the old and broken political hack who's impeached me twice and lost, is finally calling it quits. She illegally made a fortune in the stock market, ripped off the American public, and was a disaster for America. I'm glad to see the stench of Nancy Pelosi go. So mixed metaphors, see the stench, Nancy Pelosi go. This is classic acerbic, toxic Donald Trump. This is how he gets some people in line. If Donald Trump were ever to insult me, there's one approach by saying, you post yourself on social media, it says, Donald Trump insulted me and all I got was this lousy t-shirt. Probably the more Christ-like way would say is, as you can see, Donald Trump and I don't agree on this matter. Hopefully we can work together on other issues, which is more turning your other cheek. Remember, both sides are doing it. You remember when Nancy the Ripper, the 2020 State of the Union, where she ripped things up? Both of them claim to be Christians, so don't compartmentalize things. You remember when President Nelson said peacemakers needed with Russell M. Nelson, then Dan Liljenqest talked about defending the Constitution. Behind the Constitution, there's cultures and social mores. Read Federalist Number 2 talks about that. And in both cases, it's both people just, I extend the invitation to repent to both Donald Trump. Yeah, Trump's funny about it, but it's can backfire, it's counterproductive. Part of the reason why Donald Trump got impeached at least a second time, which we all know is bogus, is that he just made a lot of enemies, and his enemies chose not to forgive him. Speaking of forgiveness, Elder Garrett W. Gong, he attended what's called an organized intelligence. That's, of course, is taken from the book of Abraham. I'm not sure if they're understanding that term correctly, and that's going to create some problems, but I'm at 13 minutes. I want to keep this kind of quick. I actually have a full day-to-day endowment session plus state conference. So as Elder Gong has been saying, AI is not God. We don't think it's God. Kind of reminds me of, it's a trope in science fiction where you have computers run things. Twilight Zone, there's an episode called The Man in the Cave, or The Old Man in the Cave. The Fedderman Project, where you have computers take over things. So you have to take his warning. I'm older, so I've been through it, and so maybe the younger generation hasn't heard this. You have to pay attention. You have to keep repeating some things for the benefit of the younger generation. Oh, sorry, my green cup, which I really liked, I dropped it last week, so I have to go back to this little sort of a gnome type character. Cheers. It's interesting. You said that the church won't use AI to create images of Jesus Christ or the Father or to prepare conference talks. Now, about conference talks, I always agree with that. You have to say things out in your mind. And just by repeating what the chatbot tells you to do, that is not studying it out in your mind. Think about like a chatbot giving you a patriarchal blessing would be the same thing. Images of the Savior, that's interesting because on some of my other podcasts, the Come Follow Me ones, I've actually been having it generated pictures of the Savior for years now. I don't see anything wrong with it as long as the image created is appropriate. Now, that's sometimes a bit fluid standard. So by appropriate, you extrapolate from images that the church uses, such as the Karl Bloch ones, Del Parson. So that's when you sort of get an idea. And of course, it's sort of a 33% judgment call, 66% common sense type of thing when you make these types of decisions. So of course, you always want to be extra cautious. There's this one I want to do, but it fails the common sense and test and church standards. I really hate these conference talks and firesides where they talk about Jesus Christ cheering you on or Jesus Christ being a cheerleader. I want to do one of Jesus Christ in a cheerleader suit to ridicule that, but no, that's counterproductive, so I won't do it. So pray for me to resist the temptation to do that. So like I said, I'm kind of curious the principle behind it. I realize that you just always have to have a filter for an image you create. And I've seen some ridiculous stuff apparently there's like the Salt Lake Temple rocking to outer space. Someone posted on social media, so so there you go. So I'm curious about the principle behind it, and I'm always open for correction and clarification. So will I stop using AI to create pictures of the Savior? That's a question, because you can do good ones. You always make sure you're getting good theology in, the halo thing, wings, that type of stuff. But I'm just curious about the principle, why it's wrong, if how is this any different than an artist depicting Jesus Christ wrong? So there you go. Well, we had the 2 deaths of Dick Cheney in New York City. Then we had a new birth in the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. Bishop Gerald Cassé was called to the 12. Now, I've been wondering, he was presiding bishop for 11 years now. President Hinckley, President Monson, President Nelson, President Oakes. I was wondering when he's going to get released, so this answers the question. No problem with him, and I'm not going to make any jokes. Yeah, they're going to add escargot to the sacrament. Okay, that's another inappropriate joke. Now, a funny one would be for your next ward activity, ward barbecue. We're going to have barbecued escargot. Now, that'd be kind of funny, but light-mindedness, I mean, what does the scripture say about that? So supportive of him. He's a pleasant guy. He actually looks older than he is. I didn't realize he's in his 60s, so he's about 10 years older than I am. So he's about my age right now when he's called a presiding bishop. No problem with him. My last name is Hunter. I'm actually a collateral relative of Bishop Edward Hunter from Pennsylvania, then the Hunters in Oakley and in Burley, Idaho. So I'm part of that family. So as the presiding bishop family, welcome, Yard, and completely supportive of you. You're a pleasant guy. And oui, j'étudie français au lycée. Yeah, so I speak French, studied in high school. And hey, you're a Republican, please learn Spanish. It's tempting to say that we have witnessed a miracle in Zion. Truly, this is a global church. Well, it became a global church in October 1833 when Joseph Smith went on his first mission to Canada. That's Joseph crossing to Canada. Okay, we're an international church now. President Russell M. Nelson in April 1996 talked about this. And he said, I perceived such confusion in the mind of a newspaper reporter who asked one of our leaders when a representative of such and such a country would become a general authority. While that question was being answered, this is Russell M. Nelson, I thought about our beloved general authorities born in the countries of Asia, Europe, North and Central and South America, and of the islands of the sea. Though many of these brethren come from many nations and speak several tongues, not one of them was called to represent his native country. Presiding quorums of the church are not representative assemblies. Each leader has been called to face the people as a representative of the Lord, not the other way around. Sorry for that, I was sipping wrong. President Nelson repeated this thing at his press conference when he became president of the church. The role of women and people of diverse racial and ethnic backgrounds in the church. We are white and we are Americans, said President Nelson, referring to the presidency of the 12, although President Uchtdorf is from Germany. This is for the calls of Gong and Swadesh. But look at our quorums of the 70. Look at our leaders locally. Wherever we go, the leadership of the church is from the local communities, and those are the real leaders. Presiding quorums are not representative assemblies. We'll live to see the day when there will be other flavors in the mix, but we respond because we have been called by the Lord. So this is not a distributive justice, okay, it's time for someone else. All you white Salt Lake City people with blue eyes have had your turn. So no, this is revelation. So it's 20 minutes. Now I'll sit better so I'm not burping while talking. Which leads us into some pointers, a life hack section I have. First of all, be able to laugh at yourself. So like I said, I was having some nose problems. It's cold and I'm wearing this jacket. I was burping a bit. Developing the ability to kind of laugh things off, make it a joke, and go on is a thing to add to your skill set. Now, here's one I wrote. Life's some pointers. Dispute with eBay. Bought a book on eBay and just sat there. I was waiting for it. So after about 3 weeks, I contacted the seller. Now, what I did not do, this is the bad example. You guys screwed up. I demand my money back. They probably would have done it. This is what I did. This is the good example. I said, I haven't gotten the book yet. What are my options? This is a trick I learned from watching the Pawn Stars. So as they negotiate, is that the guy selling says, okay, what are you thinking? So he sends the initiative over to the other person. Now, as you always know, in a negotiation, the first person who gives out a number loses. I don't know why that is, but it's a pattern. So he asked, okay, what options do I have? And the lady said, oh, I'm sorry this happened. We'll give you a refund. Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Get that book on your Christmas list. It's small enough to stuff in that stocking. Make sure you stuff it in your brain and live it. So I've been talking about finances. As I'm filming this, the government shutdown is still going on. If you're impacted by it, there's community resources, the United Way. I donate to the United Way. I'm a full tithe payer. So the church has resources. There's community resources. But this may be the crucible. This is the blast furnace where you reinvent yourself. Think about Donny Osmond, how he constantly reinvented himself. He started as a teen pop star and then became let's just say a cultural joke, kind of like Nickelback now. Then he came up with that song, Soldier of Love, that reinvigorated his career. Soldier of Love and Sacred Emotion back in the late 80s. So you got some cultural relevance. I think they did behind that fun VH1 series, Behind the Music. That was always great. It's funny because each episode was the same thing. Rock stars get famous, they do drugs, burn out, and then they recover. That's every episode. Two exceptions: Weird Al Yankovic and Donny Osmond. So two names you trust, Weird Al and Donny Osmond. But then he reinvented himself by doing Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. And now he's reinvented himself again by replaced Pharaoh. Okay. Pluck, tenacity, grit, determination, constantly reinventing himself. And this is what you can do during this time. This is a time to reinvent yourself. I'm going to talk about how to do a budget. This is a very simple, quick one. So what you do, you start out at the first of the month, and you just get envelope from the junk mail that we all get. Take that envelope from the junk mail, you take it, and what you do for the entire month, you take it and you stuff your receipts in the envelope. You just stuff all of them. Receipts for an entire month, and then you just stuff that in the envelope. So at the beginning of next month, what you do is you go online and you get one of these prefabricated budgets. Now this is a budget from One for the Money by Marvin J. Ashton. This is called a cash flow sheet. This is another budget by Richard Paul Evans from his book 5 Lessons a Millionaire Taught Me About Life and Love. Oh, potential spam. I hung up on you. Now back to the budget. See, this is just kind of funny. I didn't plan that, but we're having some fun here. So we're talking about serious stuff. It became this keeping you all in good spirits. So you have the prefabricated budgets. Just get these online anywhere. Just something. You want a little bit later, I'll talk about this called net worth sheet. Let's just focus on the budget first. And then you have, this is from Dave Ramsey's Total Money Makeover. This is called Quickie Budget. And let's see what this is. Is there anything else in the back? So this is the stable, but what it is. And so as you take the receipts out of this bag, I'll get this, I'm getting sort of the speckle effect. Good, nothing broke. You start categorizing the receipts and putting them into whichever category you use. Sorry to set that up. So you have the different categories: church contributions, saving, food, mortgage, utilities, transportation. So we do a lot of stuff online. So you may have to do a handwritten one when you do an e-receipt, or when you pay with your debit card. I use a credit card. I pay it off every day. You have to understand your own temperament. That just may not work with you if you have a different temperament. So what you do, save your receipts in an envelope, get one of these prefab budgets, at the end you do it out, and that gives you a baseline for what your budget's going to be. What is a budget? A budget is a proactive way of managing your money. How it does it is it tracks your spending. Proactive way of managing your money, and then it tracks your spending. There's some online budget helps: consumer.gov, mymoney.gov, Provident Living. That the church needs to work on that. The one for the money book, Dave Ramsey's books, Total Money Makeover and Financial Peace Revisited, talk about that. Richard Paul Evans' book about 5 Lessons a Millionaire taught me about life and money. Rich Man in Babylon doesn't have one, but it gives you sort of an outline. Another one is Dome Bookkeeping Record Book. There's a company called Dome, D-O-M-E, and it looks like the Capitol building. They have some resources. These things actually work for me. They look like they're from the 1940s and 1950s, and so as I read it, it sort of motivated me. Okay, I need to be really serious about this money and get it. So I worked with it for a bit, and so you tweak these as you're starting out. You're tweaking these things, and then as you get older, now I use a online spreadsheet, and that works for me. That it's just a normal Excel spreadsheet. I know Dave Ramsey has an app. I can't remember what it's called now, but you can go to these stores. I go to an office supply store, just eyeball them, see what feels work for you. Ladies might need something that's a little bit more girly with them. Like I said, I like the Dome one because it's really masculine. Feels like you're in the 1950s, sort of the man in the gray flannel suit, businessman. You're taking your money seriously. That's a quick way to do it. And so as you do that, you're going to see where your money goes, track where it's spending, you're allocating it, spending too much time at restaurants, buying Taylor Swift bobbleheads, learn how to cut those back and how to get out of debt. In addition to that, I'll talk about a net worth statement and also debt snowball at some point in the future. So replay this video, watch some other videos to round out my discussion because I am doing this a bit quick, but that's how you do a budget. And you're doing a budget to get control of your money, to get out of debt, to have financial peace, security, and prosperity. And so you don't get divorced. And you're able to set this up. It's going to take about 6 months for you to tweak this, doing this every month. But remember how you're going to feel once you get in control of your money and you're not panicky. Now, there's another approach to this. It's called the cash envelope system. So instead of having one envelope, you have a series of envelopes where you put these receipts in to show what you're spending. What the cash envelope system is where you print out your entire checkbook and you pay in cash for everything. And you put in these series of envelopes, let me grab one. So you have a series of envelopes. So one envelope, this will be rent. This will be your food budget. This will be entertainment. And this will be like travel expenses, auto expenses, clothing. And so you have these envelopes, and each one of these envelopes you put money in that you're budgeted for the entire month. Once the envelope becomes empty, you stop spending money. What if there's an emergency? First thing you do is you always build up an emergency fund of about $1,000. Don't put it on your credit card. Build up an emergency fund. So you're collecting interest. Yeah. Let's hit my notes. Now, what if you have irregular income, like you're in sales or if you're a rock star? There's a way to budget that, and it's a little bit more complex. And you can find TED Talks or Dave Ramsey videos talking about that. So that is how at least how I did my budget, is sit there, and it takes work, but you're going to get your money under control. You're not going to have headaches from collections, because you'll be able to pay your bills. By doing this system, I was able to pay for a hernia surgery, 2 bone infections in my toe, and have a toe amputated without going into any debt. Okay? You follow these principles. They're not mine. These are just how reality functions. And I'm relying upon other mentors. I don't claim to have exclusive esoteric knowledge about this. There's no trick to this. It's just mathematics and a desire to be Christ-like with your money. So that's how you do a budget. And that's the passing scene with the eyes of faith.